Hello, friends. In the novel I'm sharing today, there are numerous unexpected twists. The female protagonist Nova strives to find her place in this perilous world. Her relationships with the male protagonists are also full of ups and downs. For instance, as the bond between Nova and Phoenix begins to heat up, new dangers and challenges arise. Moreover, with the other male protagonists by her side, how will the romantic competition among them unfold? Join me in delving into this novel to experience these exciting contradictory conflicts and emotional entanglements. Chapter 37 Phoenix. I was jolted back to reality from the haunting memory by an angelic voice that could only belong to one person. Ixnobe's gentle hands caressed my face, her touch grounding me in the present. "Are you okay?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat, my protective instinct soaring with the need to reassure her. "You don't look okay," she murmured, her observant eyes scanning my features with concern. "Where did you go just now?" It was almost surreal to think that this beautiful, caring woman before me had become such an integral part of my life in such a short time. Despite knowing her for mere months, I felt a connection deeper than any I'd experienced before. I knew, without a doubt, that I would lay down my life for her. I would fight tooth and nail to keep her safe. But above all, I would cherish and love her with every fiber of my being until my dying breath. "I'm fine," I finally managed to croak out, clearing my throat to steady my voice. "I'm fine. You don't look fine," she whispered, her angelic features etched with worry. "You look terrified." Gently, I took her delicate hands in mine, giving them a reassuring squeeze before releasing them and stepping back. My strategic mind kicked in as I addressed the others in the room, my tone shifting to that of a leader. "Atlas and Cass will remain here with you. Amethyst," I instructed, my gaze sweeping over the group. "I will head to and remain in my own panic room for the duration of this lockdown." Nova's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Phoenix?" Cass sighed, his cautious nature evident in his voice. "I really don't think that's such a good idea, man. Shouldn't we stick together in case of another attack? What if that thing has friends? Or worse, one of us needs to be in their respective safe rooms when the messages start coming in." I reminded him, my tone decisive. "And it's best if I'm the one to be there to control the narrative to the Penta." "What messages?" Nova asked, her caring nature prompting her to seek understanding of the situation. Cassie pivoted in a way to address both of us at once. The Penta pings coded messages to each panic room as a way of communicating and updating each other. We get messages every so often and have to respond to them within a certain time frame. How do they know where to send the messages to if they don't even know where every honest panic rooms are located? Nova asked, her nose scrunching in confusion. "And how much time do you have to respond?" "You have an hour to respond," I provided, "and the second that hour is up, they immediately send another message that you must respond to within 10 minutes. And how do they even send these messages if these walls are so thick?" "Echo stones," I said, nodding towards the panel that held a security tablet there made from the same stones that are immersed throughout the academy to keep conversations private. The pack that used to inhabit this pack centuries ago were clever enough to embed the stones into the walls as they were building. Another reason why this was the best place for the council house. "And you can't send your replies from here." I shook my head. "How would it look like if we're all holed up together in one room? Like we're smart to stick together," Nova answered, and Atlas groaned of consciousness had all of our attention snapping toward him. Nova rushed quickly to his side, avoiding Amethyst's glowing lilac-colored hands as she continued to heal our friend. "Is he okay?" she asked, glancing at the healer. "What's happening?" "HS responding well to the treatment," Amethyst said softly, her lavender eyes glancing at Nova briefly before returning to her patient. "Then why is he groaning in pain?" "Because the healing process still hurts," she said, "and no matter how careful I try to be, the process of mending bones, muscles, or skin is still painful. As you can see, the wound on his abdomen is almost completely knitted back together." Nova's eyes snapped to the wound, her mouth gaping open as she watched the flesh heal before her very eyes. That's incredible, she whispered, her fingers caressing a freshly healed scar on his upper chest. How long will this whole healing process take? HES responding better than I could have anticipated, she said, the purple glow fading from both her eyes and hands. As she leaned back on the stool she was occupying and exhaled a deep breath, I would give him about a week, maybe 12 days tops, to feel like himself again. That's amazing. Nova tracked Amethyst's movements, but why are you stopping? Because the more magic I use, the more my own energy gets depleted, she explained gently. All of his internal injuries are healed and a majority of his external injuries are starting to heal as well. The next couple of days will be crucial because while he may look all healed, the wounds are still frangable. On that note, I better head out, I said softly, squeezing Nova's shoulder as I passed her. I'll see you 3 in about a week. Cass nodded, dismissing me as he turned his focus back to our best friend. Amethyst stood, dusting her hands off on her clothes as she locked eyes with me, purpose in those weather features of hers. Can I talk to you for a second, Fenrir? Of course. I nodded my head towards the door and she quickly followed me out. As soon as I shut the door, she whirled on me, fire in her brown eyes. Does he know? She growled. Does he know? I asked, feigning innocence. Do not act smart with me, Phoenix Fenrir, she uttered. Not when I watched you grow up all the way from a chunky little babe to a hormone-driven teenager and now a grumpy adult. I know how smart you are, and this little dumb act might have worked on me 15 years ago, but it won't work now. I sighed. Of course, Cassie Ann knows that Atlas is Nova's mate. And HES okay with it. Her head reared back in surprise because that boy is gone to the wind in love with her. I've never seen him so infatuated with someone else before, let alone a fellow heir. I honestly think if I would have told Amethyst the truth, that we were all in love with Nova and were her destined mates, her brain would have exploded and she would have ran screaming from the tunnels and exposing our secret to the world and our enemies. So instead of telling her the truth, I told her what she needed to hear in order to protect all of us. Cassie Ann's a big boy, Amethyst. I softly he'll get over it eventually for the sake of not only his best friend's happiness, but also their business relationship as heirs. Her eyes narrowed. That was a very political answer, Phoenix Fenrir. I shrugged. A very political person. Her eyes narrowed more, if that was even possible, into tiny slits. You don't seem too bothered by this revelation, Phoenix. If anything, you're taking this whole situation in stride. Why wouldn't I? My own eyes narrowed. They're my best friends. I'm happy that someone finally found their mate. You're not even the least bit jealous of him? She questioned, considering that HES younger than you. Nope, I said, turning and striding down the hall. Are we done with the interrogation here? I have somewhere to be. They'll be keeping my eye on you, Phoenix. She called after me. You're hiding something from me. All 3 of you are. And you'll eventually find out what it is. Atlas. Mommy, I watched as my 6-year-old self tugged at her pretty emerald-colored dress. Her long dark hair curled especially for today. Mommy. Why are you crying? She sniffled, wiping away the dark smudges underneath her eyes quickly before turning a bright smile on me, crouching down to lift and settle me on her hip. It's nothing, mi precioso hijo. She smushed her cheek against mine, snuggling close to me even though I tried to get away from her, squealing and shimming out of her grasp. Hey, where are you going? Mommy, don't change the subject. I put my hands on my hip, trying to give her my best glare. Why were you crying? Her amber eyes, identical to mine, softened as she bent over and booped my nose. It's nothing you should be worried about, my little titan, she said softly, just grown-up stuff. Now what do you want to eat for dinner? Does this have to do with Papa being late again? I frowned. I told him that it makes you sad when HES late like this. He promised me that he wouldn't again. Tears filled her eyes and I frowned even further. I let my small hand touch her cheek, wiping away the tears that started to fall down her pretty face. Mommy, you're crying again. I said, did I do something wrong? I'm sorry if I did. She knelt on the cold marble floor, gathering me in her arms and squeezing tightly. My sweet boy, she sniffed, holding me even tighter. You could never, ever do something wrong in my eyes. But I made you cry. These are happy tears, little one. She gripped me tighter, tears that let me know I did something right at least. I frowned harder. Well, how do I make the happy tears stop? She let out a small laugh. He'll stop crying if you promise me something. Anything, Mommy, I promised fiercely. Promise me that when you meet that one person that's meant to be yours, you'll always make sure that they not only feel safe and protected, she whispered. My father's bait walking into our kitchen with an apologetic look across his face, but that they're happy at your side too. Why, Mommy? Because not only is loneliness the worst feeling in the world, she said, but it's the worst type of pain a person could suffer from. Chapter 38 Nova. The wait was the worst part of this whole ordeal for someone like me, a neurotic and impatient over-analyzer. Because not only did I feel helpless in this situation, but I also felt incompetent. Incompetent as an errand friend. Amethyst was keeping Atlas in a magic-induced coma to keep his brain from swelling too much, and because of that, we aren't able to wake him up until he hits at least 10 days of healing. It's only been 3 days. Cassian has been quieter than normal, more subdued than I've ever seen him before, and definitely more contemplative about the situation as a whole. And don't even get me started on Nyx, because while he did check in on us here and there, like he said he would, those messages were despondent, vague, and very un-Phoenix-like of him. That should be enough healing for today, Amethyst said, interrupting my thoughts. Those vile ties of hers fading back to brown as she pulled back her magic from Atlas. Sometimes too much healing could do more harm than good. How so? If you use magic too frequently on the same person, within a consecutive time frame, it could alter the genetic make-up of that person. My eyes widened. How? I've never experienced it personally, she said with a shrug. I just know that when I was still in my coven, our elders told us to be careful about who and how often we healed someone. So does that mean that all witches can heal? I asked after the conversation lulled for a second. I mean, might as well make the most out of this situation and learn something since we'll be stuck down here for another week at least. She sat back on her chair and smiled at me. Are you really curious, or are you just trying to pass the time? I'm genuinely curious, I said, cocking my head at her words. As you know, I didn't grow up here, so I don't know anything about any faction, let alone the witches. Then how about we play a little game? She smiled. A question for question. You'll ask one and then you ask, and so on and so forth. I looked at her warily. What if I don't want to answer one? Then the game stopped. She reached forward and squeezed my hand once before letting go. This will be fun. I promise I won't ask anything that makes you uncomfortable. That's not the point of the game. Okay, I nodded. Let's play. Excellent. She clapped excitedly, her brown eyes sparkling in delight. First question. How has your experience been at Crescent Academy? My nose scrunched on its own accord. That's your first question. She nodded. It's been fine, I guess. I thought back to my first couple of months and then paused. Scratch that. Sometimes it's been a shit show of a disaster, but that's mainly because of one person. She shot me a knowing smile. Okay. Your turn? Are all witches healers? No, she said, her eyes getting that far away distant look. There are different types of witches within the covens, but we all derive from some kind of elemental power. Healers usually draw their powers from the element of water because water represents healing and the essence of life. My eyes wide. And what do the other elements represent? Nah, she sank. That's 2 questions and it's my turn. My lips twitched as I raised my hand in a go-on gesture. What do you think of the boys? My eyes wide and at her abrupt question. What? I asked with a laugh. I've known the boys since they were born, she giggled. Well, since Cassian was born. I was just a regular academy healer until Cassian's parents hired me to be their live-in au pair while they went on their research excavations. No way, I grinned at her. So you must have exciting stories about these 3. She snorted. The stories I could tell you. I glanced at Atlas with fond smile on my face before peeking over my shoulder to where Cassian was reading a textbook. A pink highlighter tucked snugly behind his e-reel. Definitely want to hear all about them later on. So I guess that smile means you think highly of the boys. She smiled coyly at me. Do you have a favorite? That's 2 questions, I remarked, which had her grinning at me, and I think it's my turn. Technically, It's still my turn since you never answered, she said, but I'll let it slide considering that no one can fake that look or smile. I blushed deeply, at a loss for words. Phoenix. I blinked as the sun's harsh beams nearly burned my retinas, my lungs taking in the fresh air for the first time in nearly 7 days. Remind me again why you decided to pull me from my bunker. I asked Rune, my beta and close confidant for almost 2 decades, with a scowl considering that everyone else is still safely tucked away in theirs. I apologize, Alpha. Rune bowed his head slightly, a frown marring his face, but we thought it best that you see this before anyone else. Yes, we. 2 pairs of footsteps sounded from behind me, making me tense as Atlas Psycho Twin stopped at my side, considering we found it first and decided to take it to your cantankerous beta instead of our own. Cantankerous. My brow raised. What the fuck do you Lobos do in your spare time over there? Read dictionaries. Play vocabulary games with friends. The nicer twin grinned. Why do you think our pack is 100% smarter than yours? Rune snorts, which has my lips tilting up in a smirk. Are you going to show me what you supposedly found, or are we going to keep chatting like your grandma's on bingo night? I asked because if it's the second option, then it'll cut my loses now. Right this way, your majesty, the one on the right. The slightly more insane one. Said we hit it about 20 feet from here. I raised an eyebrow, turning towards my beta. He shook his head. Or if you see it for yourself. The walk on the way over was comfortably quiet up, until one of the twins decided to open his big fucking mouth. How's Nova? The psychotic twin asked casually, which had me narrowing my eyes at him. Why do you even care? Don't be such a Viking dick, he sneered at me, which had me pausing and my care about her safety and well-being. I do have emotions after all. Since when? I looked at him in mock surprise because the last time I checked, someone with emotions doesn't chop up bodies for a living, wearing fucking grins on their faces while they do it. Might I experience the same emotions that same people do? Just because I express my emotions differently than you do doesn't mean that I don't have them. He shrugged. It means that you're certifiable, Rune said, looking at him like he was a lunatic. Great, great. Just what we need. I turned to my beta psycho who goes to therapy. We care about Nova, the nicer twin, said softly Shess, the daughter of our father's Alpha, and the man we once considered as an uncle. Plus, Shess different than the rest of you. I narrowed my eyes at him. Different how? Don't get your panties in a bunch, Fenrir, the more murderous twin said with a roll of his eyes. Shess beautiful and all, but we don't see her like that. How do you see her then? We were there the day Uncle Wolf announced that he was expecting a child, Tio. The slightly nicer twin explained softly, which had my head snapping sharply to him, and we were the only ones that knew that she was going to be a she. My mouth dropped open in surprise. You knew all about the Lupine and decided to say nothing. We were children, you asshole, the other one sneered. What did you want us to do? Call up the Penta and set up a meeting discussing our Focal's gender reveal party. If you would have said something sooner, or if your father would have mentioned that little tidbit when he was interviewed by the Penta after Lupina's death, we might have found her sooner. We could have brought her home. She could have grown up with us and not only learned about her heritage and history but also about her dad too. I was just upset. I was fucking pissed. Because while the logical and rational part of my brain understood why they never said anything, especially being the outcasted children of a beta that everyone feared, the other part of my brain just didn't want to hear it. It was that part of my brain that kept thinking how different things could have been if she grew up with us. How different all 3 of us would have turned out if she was by our side this entire time. Alpha. Rune's voice abruptly pulled me from my thoughts. You should see this. My gaze pivoted from him to the twins, and then down to the green camouflage tarp concealing something between 2 large and untamed shrubs. Remove the tarp. Chapter 39. Phoenix. What the hell is this? I gaped down at the without clothes dead body laying underneath the tarp. What the fuck? There was another attack while you were away, Rune said softly, which had my head snapping towards him. What? I growled. Why wasn't I notified? Why wasn't any heir or Penta member notified? Because unlike the last creature, the new one dropped dead the moment it crossed the wards. Well, where's the creature then? I asked, looking at him. Tio said what? Looked back at the body. My mouth agape, that's not possible. Apparently it is Alpha. Rune said the twins were patrolling the eastern border when he stumbled in, dropping dead at their feet mere moments later. As a shifter, I tilted my nose up in the air, getting hints of death mingled with the undeniable scent of a shifter. A shifter is not capable of becoming that thing, whatever it was. He didn't exactly look like that creature that her Talful Obo Enko said as he crossed his arms, his assessing gaze sweeping over the young shifter from head to toe. He looked more like a wolf this time, except for the intestines protruding from his abdomen. He also looked like... Kyo hesitated, looking at his brother. My eyebrow rose. Like what? Like he wanted to die. Enko frowned, an unknown emotion entering his eyes, like there was nothing left to live for and all he wanted was to finally be put out of his misery. And you didn't kill him? I asked for confirmation you weren't inclined to put him out of said misery. We didn't have to, T.O. said, like your beta said, before we could even take a step in his direction. He dropped dead. That's not the only thing. Alpha Rune winced at my exasperated sigh. Fuck. What else could possibly go wrong? I wouldn't say that if I were you, Enko murmured, making his brother elbow his ribs. What? You know that whenever someone says that, things get exponentially worse. Rune pointed at the body. According to my research, his kid went missing about 5 months ago. My heart panged at the confirmation of his age. Who was he? Jacob Edwards, the 19-year-old eldest son of Wilhelmina and Grisha Edwards. His mom died when his youngest sister was 2 and it's only been him, his father, and his sisters since then. Rune's voice dropped to a whisper. His plans were to attend med school the moment he graduated from the academy. When was he reported missing? About 5 months ago, Rune answered. Both his roommate and father filed guards report a few days after he went missing. It wasn't uncommon for him to go low contact at times to focus on his studies and exams. It wasn't until he missed a few family dinners, events that he religiously attended since his mother passed, did his father know that something was wrong. Like I said, it wasn't uncommon for him to not answer his phone for days at a time, especially during exam time. Rune shook his head, and quite honestly, the father didn't have much time to investigate why his son was visiting. Grisha Edwards' youngest daughter is very sick and requires continuous treatment from the local medical institution, something that costs much more money than anticipated, which has him working long hours at one of his 3 jobs. There was a pit forming in the bottom of my stomach at his words, something not sitting right with me at my beta's words. What night did he go missing? Rune hesitated. The night Lupine was returned. The feeling turned into an even bigger pit. And what pack did he belong to? All 3 men glanced at each other, briefly shaking their heads before looking back at me. What pack did he belong to, Beta? I demanded softly. I will not ask again. The Edwards family are devout pack members to the Lupine pack, Rune whispered, as were the 16 other people, all ages 17 through 19, that went missing within the last year. At least 10 years ago. Mom pulled on her dress, frowning as she sat on porch swing, a gift Dad gave to her for their 9th anniversary. She was bundled up in 3 big blankets, mascara smudged and a blank expression on her face as she continued to gaze over the garden Ed gave to her a year ago when she expressed joy over her newfound habit of gardening. Mom, my nose wrinkled when she took a sip from the dark crimson juice she usually reserved for times like this. Times that started to occur more frequently as my father started to travel more and more for his air meetings. The cries from my newborn brother grew louder in frequency, making me wince at not only the pitch but also his desperate attempt for the loving attention of his mother. I tried to hold him and feed him and even tried to change his diaper, which he rewarded me by spraying pee everywhere. But nothing I did for him worked. He only started to cry harder, his little face turning a shocking raspberry color. Mom, I gripped her blanket. Koyo is cryo. I can't him to stop. Not right now, Atlas, she murmured, gripping her blankets tighter. Go play in the yard, sweetie. Mom, I said in a firmer tone, more firm than I've ever used with her before. I need you to come inside and take care of my brother. My heart was pounding as she swiveled her head towards where I was standing, giving me a look she's never given me before. You sound just like him, she said, her voice devoid of emotion as she turned her head back towards her garden. Maybe there's no hope for you after all. My eyes flew open as a gasp flew from my throat. The memories that I kept tightly locked away in the back of my mind suddenly reappeared out of nowhere. Atlas, someone gasped quietly, making my head turn towards the familiar voice. Amethyst, I croaked, my voice dry and crackly, my throat feeling like someone stuffed cotton balls down my throat. What happened? She gripped the side of my head, her violet magic-fueled eyes scanning my face quickly before threading her powers through me. She asked, shining a pale light in my face before turning it from one side to the other. Vaguely, I groaned as the headache that assaulted me since I woke up started to recede. I remember killing that hideous creature and then nada. Her eyes softened as they turned back to their original brown color. What else do you remember, Atlas? My heart stuttered as I sat straighter. Where's Nova? Her eyes softened even more. Atlas, where's Nova? I asked, my tone desperate. Amethyst, where's Nova? She's fine, Atlas. Her hands squeezed my shoulders gently. She's in the next room sleeping. One of the Butcher twins got her to the Penta in time, which in turn allowed us to get to you in time for some much-needed healing. Where's Cassie, Anne, and Phoenix? The Penta lifted the protocol this morning. She said Cassie and joined Phoenix on the investigation about an hour ago. I nodded, interested to learn more about what my friends were investigating, but not so interested that I was willing to leave my mate. I stood, my legs wobbling slightly like a newborn. Fun. How long was I out for? Amethyst looked away. 9 days and 21 hours. My eyes wide, and that hideous creature did that much damage. You were on the verge of death, Atlas. She said we had 20 healers working on you at once, and the only thing they were able to accomplish was to stop the blood loss. I looked down at my healed body and wondered then, how do you fix me? Nova did. She smiled. I just assisted where I could. Vampire deception. I drank Mason and EY Blett. As an undocumented changeling, and forced to cause as a low-level witch. I gaped at her. Her eyes twinkled as she patted my shoulder. Mates having the ability to heal their mates when they get her tore ill. What? I must have not heard her correctly, because there was no way she would have or should have known that Nova was my mate. It's okay, Atlas. She touched my cheek in such a motherly gesture that I felt my emotions choking me. Especially after all the memories of my mother I just experienced. Phoenix told me that Nova was your mate. I promise I won't tell a soul. I would never betray you or Cassie Ann like that. I'm glad that you're awake now, Atlas. Before I could say anything, she headed towards the door. I'd best be going now, since my services are no longer needed. Nova was still sound asleep as I quietly made my way from the kitchen to the bathroom and finally to the bedroom. I gritted my teeth as I sat down, every bone and muscle in my body aching and burning from the lack of movement for the past week and a half. I cursed that creature to the very pits of hell as I crawled underneath the covers beside Nova. I pulled her closer to me, sighing in happiness as I pressed my nose to the crook of her neck and inhaled her sweet scent. Gods, have I missed her? She stirred, which had me freezing as she readjusted her position, snuggling even closer to me in the process. Atlas, she mumbled softly, most likely unconsciously as she dreamt about me in her sleep. Atlas, come back. To me. I'm right here, baby, I murmured into her skin, pressing a soft kiss beneath her. I promise to never leave you again. She sighed happily, snuggling her face into my chest to the point that her hair started to tickle my side. A small chuckle I tried to suppress managed to slip out, which had her stiffening in my arms. Her eyes fluttered open and the breath was stolen from my lungs at the shockingly gorgeous color, just like the rest of her. Absolutely breathtaking. Atlas, she cried happily. You're awake. I grabbed her waist, steadying her as she straddled my waist, looking down at me with such happiness and delight in her eyes that it caused my heart to pound wildly in my chest. Hey baby, I grinned up at her, pushing a lock of hair behind her ear. Did you miss me? Chapter 40. Phoenix. I frowned down at my desk, dozens of once smiling faces staring back at me, as the sound of missing person report after report printed behind me. You're telling me that over 60 missing persons reports have been filed, but only one person has been identified? Cassian questioned. A familiar analytical look on his face as he looked through all the files were we able to with the first creature. We Keldon Tenko shook his head. His arms crossed. The royal guards burned the body as soon as Alpha Obo was secured. You think that the first creature was also another missing person? I asked. Yes, Cassian nodded his head. That's exactly what I'm thinking of. T.O. glanced at every file on my desk with worry like you said. There's over 60 missing shifters here. If one of them was able to take down an Alpha Heir, one of the strongest heirs of this generation, what kind of damage could 60+ creatures do to our community? It'll be a massacre, Renko said, and we're definitely not prepared for more of them to come through our borders. We got lucky that the last creature died like it did. Watch your tongue, I growled sharply. That creature was an innocent child that was stolen from his family and people. Enko bowed his head in apology. When was Jacob reported missing? Cass asked. The night here Lupine was brought to the academy. Tio told him why. Because that means he was the last person that was taken, he said, grabbing the files and rearranged them in a way that had me raising an eyebrow. And based on when each person went missing according to their missing persons report, then that means it's possible that the first creature was probably someone that disappeared early on. I looked at Enko. Is it possible to run a DNA test taking the remains of the first creature? It'll be hard, but it's not impossible, he said. I'll get one of my contacts on that. Use discretion, I growled at him. I don't want anyone outside of this room, besides Rune and the other heirs, to know about any of this. About even the Penta? T.O. asked, and I shook my head. Especially the Penta, I warned. I don't want them digging too much into this. Why not? I pursed my lips, my eyes sliding to Cassian, who shook his head imperceptibly. Just make sure that your contact is discreet, I threat, and because if I find out that they weren't, I won't hesitate to make them disappear. Hell, keep quiet, Tenko shrugged. His phone to his ear. He knows the repercussions if he doesn't. He stepped out of the room and I turned towards his brother. Can you do me a favor? He nodded. I need you to investigate whether or not there has been a substantial amount of missing people from the Lobo pack. I asked him. Cassian and are doing the same. We need to know how far this dilemma goes. Why me? He asked, and why not our beta? Your beta is busy as it is, I told him, not mentioning that HES and rustworthy as hell. But I didn't let that little tidbit of information slip, no matter how much I was starting to trust them with Alice being out of commission as it is. He nodded as he walked towards the door, accepting my answer at face value without asking further questions, hesitantly pausing when he was halfway there. I raised a brow. Was there something else you needed? He nodded slowly, turning to face both Cassian and I. I looked towards my friend, who looked back at me with an indescribable look in his eyes, as he lowered the files in his hands to my desk. I don't want this to be a surprise to any of you when Alpha Obo wakes up, he started slowly, but my brother and I have decided to reconnect with our Lupina's pack. My eyes wide and what? I glanced over at Cassian and found that even he was taken aback by Antio's words. For so long the Butcher brothers vehemently denounced their father's pack, vowing that they would never, ever step foot on their former pack land again, no matter their downfall. So to hear that they wanted to willingly rejoin the Lupine pack, a pack that treated them like they were worse than shit at the bottom of their shoes, was startling. Why the change of heart? Cassian asked carefully. We were under the impression that you were happy in the Lobo pack. The Lobo pack has been good to us, he stated. They took us in when we were at our lowest and not only allowed my mother to reconnect with her family but also gave her a purpose after our father's death. So then why would you willingly want to leave your home? Because sometimes homes are meant to be temporary, Enko said as he strode back into the room, confidence radiating from his smug face as he stopped beside his brother and nudged his shoulder in such a sibling type of way that it made miss my own sister at this moment, and we were always supposed to end up by Nova's side. The past, Enko. I frowned at my brother, pinching his side as he continued to wring his hands together as we stood in front of Uncle Wolf's door. When our father told us that Uncle Wolf wanted to talk to us, I thought nothing of it. When he clarified that Uncle Wolf wanted to talk to us, alone without the presence of our parents, even I had to admit that I was a little nervous. Probably just as nervous, or even more so. than T.O. was at this moment. The only difference between the two of us was that I was better at hiding my nerves than he was. Obviously, we knew that we weren't in danger, because this was Uncle Wolf we were talking about. But I couldn't help but wonder what we must have done this week to have him summon us like this. Stop that, I hissed at my brother, slapping at his hands before knocking on the door. It makes you look guilty. I am guilty, he gulped. I stole Uncle Wolf's last apple fritter from the donut box yesterday without telling anyone. I bet he found out, and that's why he's calling us up here. He wants a confession. I stared at my brother, wondering how in the hell we're related, let alone how we're twins. Why would he call us to his office over a donut? I asked. If anything, he's calling us about the fight you started 2 days ago. T.O. winced. I forgot about that. I raised a brow. You forgot about the fight that caused you to put 4 middle schoolers in the hospital. They jumped me. His eyes darkened as he thought about the fight. It's not my fault that they overestimated their abilities. And remind me again why they jumped you. They were teasing some kid in a wheelchair. He shook his head. The poor kid looked helpless and scared. I couldn't let them treat him like that, so I gave them a taste of their own medicine by putting them in wheelchairs. I snorted. Yeah, that's definitely why Uncle Wolf is calling us up here. He shrugged, his nerves gone. I don't regret a single thing. Before I could say anything else, Uncle Wolf's door swung open and he grinned down at us, his gray eyes twinkling. T.O. and I both froze. Why, you ask? Because this is the first time we've seen this particular expression on Uncle Wolf's face. He looked ecstatic, happier than I've ever seen him before, joy practically radiating from every pore in his body. You're not in trouble because of the fight, boys? He ushered us inside his office, ruffling out hair. I quite agree that those boys deserved everything that happened to them. I don't tolerate that kind of shit in my pack, no matter who initiates it. I grinned at his words, glad that we weren't in trouble. T.O. frowned. If you're not mad at us for the fight, then why are we here? I jabbed his side, shooting him a what the heck look. He beamed at us, leaning against his desk as he motioned for us to take a seat. Boys, I think it's finally time that you were given your own assignment within the pack. T.O. choked out a gasp, turning to me with wide eyes that I'm pretty sure were mirrored on my own face. But we're only 9.5. You know, your father was around the age when I asked him to be my beta. Really? I beamed at him. Dad never told us that. Uncle Wolf winced. I think he probably wanted to wait until you were older before he explained that particular story to you two. Why? I asked. It's a long story, kiddo, he smirked, but a funny one once you're old enough to understand. I raised a brow. So we're old enough for a pack assignment, but not old enough to hear about how our dad became a beta at such a young age. Nope, he grinned at me, and since I'm the alpha, I don't have to explain to these shit. I'll leave that up to your da. I laughed while my brother murmured something about Uncle Wolf owing a few $100 to the new switch our mom just implemented for us. I rolled my eyes. Goody tissues. Back to what I was saying, Uncle Wolf opened up his desk drawer and pulled out a medium-sized frame, looking down at it with an unknown emotion in his eyes. Before handing it over to us, this is the assignment. I looked at my brother in confusion before focusing on the weird little black and white photo framed in my hands. A little alien being sat in the middle of it, and no matter which way I turned it, I couldn't understand what the hell I was looking at. Uncle Wolf, I think you forgot to take the weird photo that comes with the frame out, I said, because I have no idea what I'm looking at. He chuckled and readjusted the frame in my hands until I was once again looking at the little alien thing. Boys, he beamed, I want you to officially meet your cousin. Our heads snapped up so fast I'm surprised we didn't break them. What? I barked at the same time my brother breathed your air. Uncle Wolf nodded, taking the frame from our hands and lovingly running his index finger across the little alien's tiny head. A baby, I said. In shock, you're having a baby. He beamed. Yeah, how? I asked and he blanched slightly. I think that's a question for your parents, Skiddo, he said, his cheeks turning red as he looked away. I don't think. T.O. cleared his throat before Uncle Wolf could say anything else. I think NC means how are you having a baby if we don't even have a Luna yet? You have a Luna? If that's true, then why didn't we know about it? I asked with a frown. Why hasn't she been introduced to the pack yet? He pursed his lips. the light slightly fading from his eyes. "The most important people have met her," he said softly, "and I was going to introduce her to the pack next month, during the solstice, when we found out we were expecting. For their health and safety, Ivy decided to wait until after our baby is born to officially introduce them to our pack." I looked away, hurt by his answer, hurt that my brother and I weren't considered important enough to meet our Luna, judging by the expression on his face too. Kia was just as hurt by our uncle's words as I was. "Boys," Uncle Wolf said softly, kneeling next to us and gently gripping our shoulders, "you two were one of the first ones I wanted her to meet, but your father thought it was in every owner's best interest if you waited to meet her along with the rest of the pack. Why," he smiled tightly, "since when do you question your pa?" And co. I crossed my arms over my chest since he decided to start lying to us. "He didn't lie to you, little warrior." Uncle Wolf ruffled our hair. "He just kept his promise to me." "I don't understand," Tio spoke up softly. "Is this why we're really here, Uncle? Do we even have an assignment, or do you just want to surprise us with this news?" Both Uncle Wolf smiled at him. "You really do have an assignment. Your father and I talked about it in lengthy conversations, and we felt like you two were ready." When he didn't elaborate further, I sighed. "Care to share what the assignment is?" "Protection duty." I looked at him in surprise. "Protection duty? We're 9.5. Tio gave him an incredulous look. "Who could we possibly protect?" "My heir." "Why would your son, the Lupine heir, need protection?" I reared my head back in shock. "And from who?" "She what?" My face scrunched in confusion. She who?" "My daughter," he said softly, an unknown but protective look entering his eyes. "Your next Lupine heir. The first girl born to the Lupine family since the beginning of our creation. Shall need the protection of both of you in order to survive those who will come for her. Because they will come for her. They'll all eventually come for her." Chapter 41. Nova. "Hey baby," he whispered huskily to me, locking that pretty amber gaze of his with mine as he twirled a strand of my hair around his callous finger. "Did you miss me?" "What kind of question is that?" My gaze scanning his face as I looked for any sign of pain or discomfort. "Of course I missed your snarky ass. It was quiet here without you." A smile he gave me had butterflies fluttering in my stomach because it was so different than his usual snarky grins or cocky smirks. It lit up his entire face, making him appear younger and softer, and more like the 21-year-old that he is. My index finger lightly traced from his temple to the edge of his jaw, and his smile wide, and even more before gently cupping my cheek with his large hand. I closed my eyes and placed my hand on top of his, gripping it tightly. "You really scared us, Atlas," I whispered, my heart aching. "For some unknown reason you scared me. We thought you weren't going to make it." "Baby," he whispered just as soft as I did. "No matter what happens, no matter how far away we from each other, know that it always come back to you. That's my vow to you. Forever and always." "You can't promise me that," I said, closing my eyes as his thumb swept across my cheek in a soothing motion, "especially not after what just happened." A minor inconvenience. I felt him shrug underneath me like it was no big deal. The thing caught me off guard. "It won't happen again." My eyes snapped open as I pulled away, glaring down at him harshly. "You make it sound as you accidentally broke your arm." I snapped, and not nearly fucking died at the jaws of a monster. "Nova. No, after the stupidity you just spewed. You don't get to say anything," I said, glaring down at him as my hair curtained us in this private, heated moment. "Now, I don't know if you think that because of your namesake. You're invincible and shit, but let me remind you that you nearly fucking died out there. In fact, you were literally in the Grim Reaper's grip before Amethyst was able to bring you back to the land of the living. I watched that thing attack you. I heard the anguished howls of pain you released no matter how hard you tried to keep them in. I felt your blood soak through my clothes and stain my fingers." I gripped his face tightly in my hands, making sure he understood the importance of my words. "So don't diminish the severity of what just happened to you," I growled, anger radiating through my chest, and don't make promises that you and I both know you won't be able to keep. The world we live in, the world you dragged me into, is too dangerous for that. Baby." His eyes softened at my words. "That's why I made you a vow. Promises are meant to be broken, but vows especially the vows I make to you. Last through this lifetime as well as the next. I sighed, making a move to pull away when his hands suddenly clamped down on my hips and reversed our positions until I was on my back and he was settled in between my legs on top of me. My eyes widened as my hands automatically came to rest on his broad, tatted shoulders. Are you crazy? I checked his injuries to make sure they were actively bleeding again. You can't move like that. You just got out of a 10-day coma. Nova. Humor lit his tone as he gripped my chin tightly in his grasp. Baby. Look at me. I stubbornly avoided his eyes. Nova Nix, he said in a sing-song voice, his nose skimming my cheek and then down my neck. Will you listen to me? No, I breathed, nervous at his close proximity and how it set off the butterflies in my stomach. Not if you're going to keep saying stupid things. Baby. I'm sorry. He buried his face in my neck. I didn't realize how traumatizing it was for you to see something like that. I guess I'm so desensitized to these sorts of things that I didn't take into account how it could affect you. I was so scared, Atlas. I shivered. Both at the memory of what nearly happened to him and the small kiss he pressed to my neck. I knew that this place was dangerous, but I don't think I realized how dangerous until 10 days ago. To know that you and the others grew up around this. Around these constant dangers. I choked up. Imagining what it must have been like growing up for the 3 men I considered friends. His head snapped up. Those amber eyes darkening. Would never let anything happen to you, princess, he growled. Cass. Nix, and I would die before we'd let anything or anyone touch a single hair on your perfect head. There you go, making promises you can't keep, Atlas, I whispered. You know that. The thing was after me, right? What? He stiffened, shaking his head. No. He attacked me. Because you were in the way, I said softly. He wasn't even paying attention to you until you got in between us. That doesn't make any sense, he growled. Why would he want you? I raised an eyebrow. I'd think it would be easier to give you a list of why he wouldn't want me. His lips quirked before he schooled his expression. Do the others know that he was after me? I clarified and he nodded. Tio told them. That's what they're at right now, trying to figure out why he was after me. He scrutinized me, somehow realizing that I was leaving something out. What aren't you telling me? He narrowed his gaze. You know why they were after you, don't you? I have a theory, I said slowly. It's the most plausible one I could think of, and it's because of who I am, I whispered. More importantly, who my biological father was. You think he was after you because you're Last Lupine? It makes sense if you think about it, I said sadly in the last of my line. If anyone had something to gain by killing an heir, it'd be the most obvious target. I have no family, no connections of my own besides the Penta. An obligatory resource at best. My pack, if it's even really mine at this point, barely sees me as one of their own. By the way they treated the twins, it's apparent that if it came down to it, they wouldn't back me up. If someone killed me, then they'd have everything to gain. A vicious and ferocious snarl overcame his face as he pushed me further into the bed. His weight is surprising comfort to me. I've never let someone be this close to me, always acting aloof to male attention because I was interested or just not ready to take that vulnerable step with someone that I couldn't 100% trust. Even my first kiss was more like a quick peck on the lips from my friend's older brother. A kiss that lasts all of a nanosecond. I squirmed as his heat soaked into me, the butterflies in my stomach flapping so rapidly that it felt like they were seconds away from bursting out of my chest. I'll kill them all before they get within a hair's breadth of you. He leaned his face closer to mine. Those amber eyes darkening even further. I'll rip them limb for limb until there's nothing left but bone and ash. You're just one man, Atlas. I sent him a weak smile. You barely managed to kill that one creature last time. What happens if 2 of them were to attack next time? You're really hurting my ego here, baby, he murmured, pushing his face into my neck, inhaling deeply. I swear I had everything under control. I rolled my eyes, running a hand through his hair and smiling wide as he shivered in my arms. It was good to know that I affected him the same way and the others affected me. Baby, he whispered. I hummed, gently tugging on the strands of his hair. I felt him swallow harshly against my neck. Can I ask you a question? Anything. Are you scared of me? I untangled my hands from his hair and pushed on his shoulders, forcing him to pull away from me slightly. I noticed that he avidly avoided looking in my eyes. Why are you asking me that? I questioned curiously. He sighed and rolled off me, putting his head in his hand as he laid on his side and looked down at me. You've seen me as a wolf before he started, and I couldn't help but interrupt him. Yes, I reminded him I remember seeing your wolf when you kidnapped me from my home and brought me here. His eyes narrowed playfully, some tension leaving his body at my snarky answer, smartass. What I was trying to say before I was rudely interrupted, he continued, while you've seen my wolf before. I know that you've never witnessed a murder before. I know firsthand how that one moment can change your life forever. I swallowed back the tears that threatened to fall at his words. He was right. I was scared. Just not of him. Chapter 40 Nova. I was scared. Just not of him. I was scared of the unknown and how little I actually knew of this world. I was scared of the dangers I didn't realize were constantly following me, patiently waiting in the shadows to strike and burst the protective little bubble I've created for myself since coming to Crescent Academy. Stupidly, while I was aware of the dangers inside of the academy, I arrogantly thought that I could deal with any problem that these privileged kids threw my way. Rumors, glares, snide remarks, petty posters. No big deal. A terrifying half-dead creature gunning for me and nearly killing someone that I realize has becoming important to me. Now that was a different fucking issue, because while I hadn't had the time to really process what I witnessed that day, too busy worrying over Atlas and the others, I couldn't stop the subconscious recollections swimming through my dreams at night. There was just so much blood, covering everything and anything I laid my eyes on. A shudder moved through my body before I could stop, the heat from Alice's hand on my hip immediately disappearing as he misinterpreted my terror for disgust. I'm sorry, baby, he whispered, pain mingling in his voice as a choke sound left his chest. Never. I won't. I'm sorry. I placed my hands over his mouth, essentially hushing his unnecessary apologies. Lobo. I straddled him gently, leaning my head on his chest as I lifted my hands from his mouth. Does it feel like I'm scared of you? No. He blinked toolishly at me, but that could be because I'm biased, a little hopeful, and a hell of a lot confused right now. My lips twitched up in a smile. And how long have you known me? A couple months, give or take, he said, eyeing me warily. Why? So you know that I'm not one to mince my words or hold back my feelings. I said I'm also not one to let others touch me, like at all. I lifted his hands gently until they were once again back on my hips, biting my lip to hold back the waft that wanted to escape as he continuously blinked rapidly up at me. You annoy me in more ways than I thought was physically possible. I began. You're rude. Arrogant, somewhat crass at times. Jeez, he muttered. Tell me how you really feel, baby. I raised a brow. Do I need to muzzle you, wolf boy? His eyes heated, that familiar smirk racing his face, making the butterflies go in my stomach go haywire. That really depends on what you plan on using to keep me quiet. His grin turned down. Might sinful, and I might have some ideas if you're open to it. I blushed, freaking blushed at his statement, ignoring his enticingly scandalous words. But underneath all the assholeness is a humble, honest man that not only cares deeply for his pack but also for those closest to him, regardless of their status within a pack. I said softly, cupping his cheek. From what you've shared with me, your life hasn't been easy, with your mom dying the way she did, but you've managed to make the best of it, for not only your brothers but for yourself too. I took a deep breath, hesitantly leaning forward and kissing the corner of his mouth, my lips trembling softly as they met his unshaven, scruffy face. So the answer is no, Atlas, I said softly, pulling back slightly as I looked down at him, only to find him gazing up at me intensely with an unknown look in those amber eyes of his. Not scared of you or the others. I honestly think, as fuck up as this sounds, that even if I saw you murder 1,000 of those creatures, I still wouldn't be scared of you three. Fucking little star, he breathed, muttering something unintelligible under his breath. You're going to be the death of me. I smiled down at him, about to make a snarky remark when his hand suddenly shot out and cupped the back of my head, pulling lightly on my hair as he guided me close to him. But oh, what a way to go, he murmured, tugging me in close to him until our faces were only an inch away from each other. They might murder me when they find out, but fuck it. Before I could ask what he meant, his grip tightened on my hair as he reared up and kissed me, twisting in a way that forced me to follow his lead as he reversed our positions. He groaned into my mouth, adding more of his delicious weight on top of me as he nudged my legs apart with his as he settled in. The kiss, if that's even what you wanted to call it at this point, considering it nearly consumed my very existence with how fan-fucking-tastic it was not only unexpected but also mind-numbing to the point that I'm pretty sure I forgot my own name for a second. Atlas shifted slightly, and in my lust-induced haze, my body misinterpreted that as him trying to leave, so my legs automatically wrapped around thick waist and subconsciously brought him closer to me. He swallowed my whimpers of needed and groans of delight, letting out his own sounds of pleasure as my hands gently tugged at his silky, dark hair. I moaned as he broke away from the kiss, arching my neck as his lips trailed down my neck, nipping and leaving small bites on my skin. When that sensation became too much for me to handle, I yanked his head back up and kissed him again, our mouths dominating one another in a way I've never experienced before. Not that I had much experience to begin with. I mean, what in the ever-loving fuck is going on here? A familiar voice boomed loudly in the small safe room, startling me so badly that I accidentally bit down on Atlas's full bottom lip. I bit down too hard, apparently, because 1 second he was fine and the next. A slight metallic tang of blood filled my senses and coated my tongue as he continued to kiss me, not caring about his bleeding lip in the slightest. Atlas groaned, impressively managing to somehow grip the bed's comforter and pull it over our heads until we were enveloped in a blanket cocoon, only pulling back slight as the shuffle of footsteps and strides could be heard from across the room. "Baby?" he panted out, his forehead dropping to mine as we stared at each other, trying to catch our breaths. "Don't be alarmed or feel guilty about what the guys will do next. Trust me, it's every bit deserved." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "If they start beating the shit out of me," he clarified, "right when the covers were ripped right off of us and he was dragged away from me, remember, baby? It was all totally worth it." I gasped and sat on my knees on the bed, reaching for Atlas as Phoenix continued to drag him away from the bed. Cassie and hovered in the doorway of the room, eyes shifting from me to Atlas and then Phoenix before settling on me once more. His eyes narrowed in an unfamiliar emotion. Phoenix was angrily muttering something to Atlas, his familiar scowl in place as he continued to berate the man who was just caught kissing me. My lips tingled just thinking about said kiss, a blush heating my cheeks and rushing towards my neck. Cassie and narrowed his eyes even further, stepping into the room until he stood a foot away from the bed. He reached out slowly, almost hesitantly, as he brushed a piece of hair behind my ear. "He wasn't rough with you, was he?" "No," I blinked up at him, sitting back on my heels. "Why do you ask?" His index finger trailed down my neck, swirling softly around a particularly tender spot. I gasped as he continued his trek down lower, stopping short at the edge of the V-neck sleep shirt that I wore. "Because his marks look like they hurt?" Cass asked, his eyes darkening. "Do they hurt, princess?" "No," I breathed. "He didn't. They don't hurt." He must have saw the truth in my gaze because his body relaxed fractionally. "And you wanted him to kiss you?" he asked in a quieter tone, the voices of the other two idiots rising as their anger got the best of them. "He wasn't pushy. He didn't extort his illness against you." "No," I looked away, my cheeks on fire at this point. I initiated it. Silence. After a few awkward seconds of silence, I took a chance sneak at Cassian. He turned before I could get a good look at his face, clearing his throat as he stepped away from me. "I see," he said in a weird tone. "Well, you let me know if he becomes too clingy or obsessive. I've seen firsthand the extent the Lobo stake when pursing their girl."